Welcome to the Level 2 Background Screening Process Overview for VR Service Providers. During this video, we will cover the process for completing the background screening and the related application. What is a Level 2 background screening? A Level 2 background screening consists of a fingerprinting of an applicant, in this case, for the purpose of employment. The fingerprinting is conducted electronically and is submitted to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, to obtain criminal history information for the requesting agency. Once the criminal history search has been completed by FDLE and the FBI, the results are returned back to the applicant's profile in the Clearinghouse. The fingerprints are retained with FDLE for 5 years until the retain prints date expire. VR is required to conduct all background screenings using the Agency for Healthcare Administration, AHCA, Care Provider Clearinghouse web portal. The web portal is set up for 7 specified agencies to be able to review criminal history on an applicant in order to make a determination of eligibility to provide services. The agencies utilizing the Clearinghouse are Agency for Healthcare Administration, Department of Juvenile Justice, Department of Health, Department of Children and Families, Agency for Persons with Disabilities, Department of Elder Affairs, and VR. One of the advantages to participating in the Clearinghouse is information sharing. If a provider has worked for one of the other agencies using the Clearinghouse and they would like to provide services to VR customers, chances are likely that a previous background screening from a specified agency was conducted and exists within the Clearinghouse. There are 2 steps individuals must complete to have their fingerprinting results stored in the Clearinghouse. 1. Register to gain access into the Clearinghouse. 2. Build the applicant's profile, get fingerprinted at a live scan fingerprint provider of your choice. You must choose from the available list of fingerprint providers in the Clearinghouse. Displayed on the screen are the steps in the background screening process. VR sends the application to the provider. The provider completes and returns the application to VR. It's reviewed by the background screening unit at VR. VR sends an email with instruction guides for the AHCA Care Provider Clearinghouse. After a provider receives access to the Clearinghouse, he or she will build a profile using the required demographic information. Results from the background check are matched to the profile information, so it is imperative that profile information is entered correctly and completely. If no criminal history is found, the Clearinghouse will automatically determine the individual eligible. If a criminal history record is returned, the VR background screening unit will determine if the applicant meets the criteria outlined in Section 413.208 and Section 435.04 Florida statutes. Eligible individuals must then move their results to an electronic employee roster under the provider's name. Once all requirements have been met, the application can move forward as a qualified eligible VR service provider. According to Section 435.08 Florida statute, the employee or employer will be responsible for the cost of fingerprinting. Some providers may have contractors or subcontractors as interpreters that require background screening. If the employer decides, the contractor or subcontractor could be responsible for the cost of the screening. The average cost of a screening is $75. A portion of the cost comes from state and federal fees totaling $36. Any additional fees are an accessory fee for the live scan provider, which means the total cost of a screening will vary by vendor. The statutes related to the background screening requirements are Section 413.208 Florida statute and Section 435.04 Florida statute. Section 435.12 Florida statute details the AHCA Clearinghouse procedure. The link to the Clearinghouse sign-on is displayed on the screen. but it has also been included in the instruction guides. To locate a live scan vendor, you can visit ahca.myflorida.com for more information. To learn more about the regulations and requirements of this new process, visit rehabworks.org. For questions about the background screening process, contact the VR Background Screening Unit at vrbackgroundchecks@vr.fldoe.org. If you look at the new application available on this page for sign language vendors, you will see a multi-page document. This document has all of the pertinent information. Let's emphasize some of them here. To meet the background screening requirement, sign language interpreter agency groups or individuals must re-register. Any employee expected to provide direct care services to vulnerable persons, as well as the administrator, chief financial officer, and director of the service provider, must be fingerprinted and screened by the Vocational Rehabilitation Background Screening Unit. Your application must be received by June 30th, 2018 to allow time for processing, including background screening. The application will provide you with the information you need to start the fingerprinting process. Your registration will require to have cleared fingerprints in our records by August 1st, 2018. If no one is cleared at that point, the registration will be deactivated. The first section of the application asks for the basic demographic and contact information for the applicant. Individual applicants and agency vendors use the same form to apply. Please use the vendor status to indicate whether you are applying as an individual or as a group agency vendor. The list of accepted credentials has not changed since the registration last year, except that the Florida Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, FRID, credentialing will be phased out by June 30th, 2018. Any interpreters with RID credentials expiring on or before June 30th, 2018 must be able to provide proof of one of the recognized credentials in order to continue providing services. All interpreters providing services to VR customers must hold current and appropriate credentials and relevant memberships. Interpreters to qualify for registration must possess one of the following credentials: Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, RID, CSC, IC or TC, CI or CT, NIC, NIC Advanced, NIC Master, NAD 3, 4, or 5, RSC or CDI. Interpreters holding Boys Town National Research Center's EIPA Level 4.0 to 5.0. Holders of this credential will submit to VR the EIPA results once, showing that testing stimulus used was the secondary educational material, and will maintain annual RID associate membership for the duration of providing services under this application. Interpreters holding the Board for Evaluation of Interpreters BEI credentials. Holders of any of the BEI credentials will additionally maintain annual RID associate membership for the duration of providing services to VR under this application. Upon request by VR, the vendor agrees to and shall present proof of current credentials and relevant RID membership in order to maintain a current vendor registration status. For individuals, individual interpreter vendors must provide proof of current credential and RID membership at time of application and on a yearly basis thereafter. For group agencies, group interpreting agencies must submit proof of credentials for each new additional interpreter added to the sign language employee contact form. Proof of credential will include copies of documentation of passing scores on the BEI or EIPA, accompanied by an RID associate membership or an RID card indicating certified. The division will conduct routine monitoring of services provided to VR customers. Group interpreting agencies must be able to provide proof that the interpreter indicated on the invoice held current credentials and membership at the time services were rendered. Invoicing requirements. Individual interpreting vendors and group agency interpreting vendors must submit an invoice on company letterhead to submit billing for services to VR. The invoice must contain the interpreter's name and current credentials. Failure to submit this information may result in a delay in invoice processing. As a result, the VR Sign Language invoice is no longer required as of August 1st, 2018. All staff assigned to work with VR customers must be approved by VR's Vendor Registration Unit before providing services. Group interpreting agencies must submit the attached employee contact form with initial registration. The semi-annual employee report for group agencies is used to track any staff change that might have occurred since registration. Remember, this form must be submitted July 1st and January 1st each year. All interpreters providing direct services and any staff changes that have occurred since the previous reporting period must appear on the form, and background screenings for new staff must be available in the Clearinghouse. If your agency has an administrator or board members, their information must be captured on the administrator and board member registration form for group agencies. If there are changes to any of these positions, a new form must be submitted. As a reminder, the administrator and financial officer must have background screenings. If you are a sole proprietorship, enter your name as the administrator. The last page of the application indicates the areas and counties in which you provide services. For questions about the vendor registration process, contact the VR Registration Unit at vrvendors@vr.fldoe.org. We want to thank you for your invaluable contribution to helping people with disabilities find and maintain their employment and enhance their independence. We look forward to continuing to work with you.